All right, welcome to another Algebra 2 final exam review, and this is question number 13, or the last sample question in the review packet. This particular problem is really trying to test students' knowledge on function operation, like f of g of x type of thing. But it also kind of helps students understand how the reason we learn that is also it's related to our sort of analysis and exploration on inverse function. And I'll use this example to kind of talk a little bit about that in just a minute. Okay, let's start. Let's go right into here. Find inverse function if f of x is equal to negative 3x plus 5. So, part A, f of x is equal to negative 3x plus 5. Rewrite this as y in a y term. Y is equal to negative 3x plus 5. In order to find inverse, is you basically switch x and y. Right, so I switch out, so y becomes x, now it's x and negative 3y, and I'm gonna use this notation negative 1. This doesn't mean it's to the power negative 1. I want you to understand this is about inverse, not the same as power of negative 1. Okay, not the same. I really want to emphasize that. And plus 5. So now I'm just going to go ahead and solve for that y, right? Solving for that y. So I'll move the negative 3y over here, so it becomes positive 3y with a little notation of negative 1. That's inverse. Just to differentiate between this and the original equation. And then move the x to the right side, we end up with negative x plus 5. So y inverse is negative 1/3 x plus 5/3, right? So that's our equation. So then I can think of it as f of inverse is negative 1/3 x plus 5/3. Okay. Now part B is asking me to verify or prove algebraically or verify algebraically that the answer that I found here is indeed the inverse. So the idea that what makes inverse to its original function is that if, graphically speaking, they are sort of a mirror image along the y equal to x line, which is like a 45-degree line, and so this idea becomes equal to x is really important. So that means if you have f of inverse of x, it will equal to inverse of f of x, and then it has to become x. That's simple. So let's do that. So we know that f of x is equal to negative 3x plus 5, and inverse of x, maybe we can call that g of x. In fact, that's what part C is saying, so I'm actually ahead of myself. Is what we found in part A, negative 1/3 x plus 5/3. So if I want to do f of inverse f of x, which is exactly the same as f of g of x, right? Then let's do that. It's negative 3. Now instead of x is the inverse plus 5. So then negative 3 times negative 1/3 x plus 5/3, right? That's the inverse, which we just found. plus phi. And then let's see what happened. Negative 3 times negative 1/3 it's just 1, so that's just x. Negative 3 times phi third is negative phi plus phi. Equal to x. You see? Mirror image. Right? So that's great news. Now part C says, so if in the premise over here, like f of x is equal to negative 3x plus phi. Again, I'm going to write it out again. Inverse of f of x, let's call it g of x, which is also part C is telling us to do, negative 3x plus phi third. This is a solution we found in part A. So it wants us to find f of g of f of x. Okay. Well, let's give it a shot. Now g of f of x. G of f of x. Well, isn't g of f of x the same as f of g of x because they're inverse to each other? And remember that was the whole premise in part B. And if they're inverse to each other, what's the answer? Answer is x. So that means this whole thing, right, because they're inverse to each other, is x. So it's f of x. And f of x is negative 3x plus phi. We're right back to our original equation. Isn't that kind of cool? So I find this fascinating just because it's playing with its own property, a mathematical property of the inverse functions. And then so when you're dealing with a function operation, which is the g of x, f of x, putting into each other, in this case we take advantage of the property of inverse, and we can come up with a solution rather quickly. And you see how these two major concepts are interrelated to each other. Well, hereby we conclude all the Algebra 2 final exam review. We have gone over many topics and different types of questions. I hope that these videos are helpful as you prepare for the final exam. Good luck to you.